The Atlantic magazine had an article. It was written by a Shadi Hamid, that's Shadihamid. I'll read a quote from it. He says, "The United States has long been a holdout among Western democracies, uniquely and perhaps even suspiciously devout. From 1937 to 1998, church membership remained relatively constant, hovering at about 70%. Then something happened. Over the past 2 decades, that number has dropped to less than 50%, the sharpest recorded decline in American history. Meanwhile, the nons, that's the atheists, agnostics, and those claiming no religion, have grown rapidly and today represent a quarter of the population." Now, from that quote, you probably would conclude that religion in America is on the decline. And I'm going to point out here, at least in the introduction to the sermon today, that actually religion in America is stronger than ever. How could I say that? You know, as human beings, and it's true for all of us, we all need something greater than ourselves, something we feel like we're dedicated to more than just satisfying our own desires and needs. Some ultimate loyalty that we're a part of or a cause, give our life meaning in some respect, in some ways. We all have a need for that. Now, God created us so that that would be satisfied through His Word and His truth. That would give us the vision, the hope, as we heard in the sermonette, and give us something to look forward to, a cause, a purpose for our lives. It was to come from God's truth. We used to have a Christian worldview, more so in our nation, and it kind of stabilized us in many respects. But if you don't have a religion, often you find it in secular commitments. Now, those commitments may not be bad, may be very good causes, but you don't have a religion, so people gravitate often towards dedicating themselves to something. Maybe it's a nationalism, environmentalism, socialism, helping the poor, some cause that you're a part of, that you're giving your life to, you're donating your money to. Those causes often take on the characteristics of a personal religion. What was religious belief has been channeled in many respects today into political belief. There's been a shift. There's been a change. What's America supposed to be as a nation? What kind of nation are we supposed to be? A lot of debate about that. These debates become like theological debates, heated debates, much like churches do over doctrine, good versus evil. So I want to show the parallels in this introduction at least, and then we'll get into things that pertain more to us. But I think it's important to point this out, this shift that has taken place. This is not a commentary on our social condition or a political sermon, just the backdrop so we can learn a lesson that we need to learn. People are no longer going to church in the way they used to, but church membership is up. Now, this, I think, is from that same article, this quote. After Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died last September, droves of mourners gathered outside the Supreme Court, some kneeling, some holding candles as though they were at the Western Wall. It took on kind of a religious atmosphere. It's just Supreme Court justices in our court system, in our physical nation, but it took on kind of a religious atmosphere to it. Kneeling, candles. And he says, as though they were at the Western Wall. On January 6th, you all recall that debacle, many carried crosses, Bibles, there were public prayers, Christian symbols, kind of like almost a religious experience as they stormed the Capitol, having to do with the election and their dissatisfaction with it. People are more and more unattached from the Christian community and biblical ethics, but find a spiritual zeal in a political cause. So many have joined what I would call the Church of the Republicans or the Church of the Democrats. We might say it's the conservative Church of God or the liberal Church of God, kind of almost like, somewhat like new religions in some respects. The theme of the one church, God, country, freedom, the flag, law, order, military, kind of the faith once delivered. Get back to the faith once delivered. Some see that kind of a parallel with the Old Testament, a little more legalistic, a little colder, a little more inflexible. If you were to say any of these individuals was un-American, it'd be like calling somebody unchristian. That's how they would liken it. Of course, you have the other church. Their theme is love, rights, people's individual rights, equality, help the unfortunate, help the downtrodden, be compassionate. That'd be like the New Testament. That's Christ-like. It's a religion of the heart. They carry the mantle of compassion for other people. This is the more maturing, let's say the progressive, the modern vision, what America is supposed to be. That would be their view. Righting wrongs. Both believe the other is a false religion. Both believe the other way will lead to ruin if it was in charge. Both seem to have, like evangelists or cult leaders. Former President Trump would probably fall into that category, but also former President Obama, President Biden. They have various supporters. Elected officials are like evangelists for each of these kind of pseudo-religions. Various media personalities. These issues carry the weight of religious doctrine, anti-abortion, pro-choice, gun control, voting, gay rights, labor unions, the environment, the border, health care, welfare, unemployment, taxes, foreign policy, education, Supreme Court justices. Those are like doctrines of religion that they're both battling over. This is the true religion. This is the true way. Conspiracy theories are like Bible prophecies. Only a certain few can see it. Only a certain few recognize what's really going on there. Can really see what's there in Bible prophecy, what the Bible's really saying, and here's what's going to happen, and here's this revelation, only a few know it. Political rallies are like religious revivals. So with this substituting Christian religion for political, we now see behavior in America that we would never have seen before, because that would have violated the fundamental Christian way of life that we espoused. But now it's acceptable because it's all for this cause. It's like a religious cause, like religious people would express. So storm the Capitol, burn cities, protest in front of the homes of elected officials, threaten them or their families, fights, viciousness, character assassination, lying, but it's all okay because it's for the cause, for the true religion, as some would see it. We often empower men and women in office who frequently don't even pretend to be virtuous, who often glory in their vice, but we don't care. They're on our side. They're for what we're for, so it's okay. So both religions, as I'm characterizing them as a religion, and it's not my ideas, as I'll read one or two more quotes, both religions are blinded to their own perspective. America's past is over-romanticized, as though we lived in some utopia. A lot of problems in America in the past, a lot of abuses. And the more compassion in America can lead to more chaos at the border, welfare, tent cities, rioting, decreased law and order. So that doesn't seem to be the answer. But both believe their doctrine is pure doctrine, and both on crusades to save the country. And well-meaning. I'm not trying to disparage people's thought or their intent. But it's like a religion. It's become a religion to many people. And those aren't the only two religions. Those maybe are the main ones. You have the environmental Church of God, the climate change Church of God, anti-racism, the health Church of God, a doctrine of food, or anti-doctors, all with a religious kind of fervor. College campuses have their kind of like religions, free speech, anti-war, Keystone Pipeline, racism, women's activism, hate speech, white supremacy. Young college students get involved in that, and it's all stirred up about it. It's like a religion in many respects. Now, this may have been from the same article. It's a quote I save. Here's what I would call the woke religion. More evidence, as if more were needed, that woke ideology functions in the lives of woke believers as a religion, like a religious belief. A militant fundamentalist faith whose faithful view themselves as duty-bound to wage holy war against the infidel, just like a Christian crusade takes on that. So, as Mr. Hamid writes, more and more Westerners are making a religion out of politics. As traditional religious adherence has declined in America, a spiritual vacuum has been created that has become increasingly filled with cult-like devotion to ideologies. That's what's filling in the void. But politics can't fill what's missing from people's hearts. I think we know that. Let's go to John chapter 4, and this will be the basis of the spiritual thought for us this afternoon. John chapter 4. Now, here Jesus made some important comments about worship or religion. John chapter 4, verse 19. Now, this is the account of Jesus coming to Samaria, and he met up with the woman at the well. And there's a long discussion and dialogue that the two of them had, and the disciples rather amazed, can't believe he's talking to this woman. Showed their culture. Well, the woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour come when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Not going to be here at Mount Gerizim in Samaria, not even going to be in Jerusalem. The location, not important, the physical location. He says, you worship and you don't know what you worship. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. The hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers, the true worshipers, shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father seeks such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The true worshipers. Are we some of the true worshipers? Now, the true worshipers are not perfect people. And their method, their understanding of how to worship God is imperfect. We don't have perfect understanding. But we're labeled or called the true worshipers, the true religion. Not a perfect understanding, not perfect people, but the true worshipers. So some keys for us to watch A lot of decent religious people, this is the shift. A lot of decent religious people are choosing cultural values over the spiritual values. We're trading them. We're getting involved in the political side, the struggle. And so we're beginning to compromise what used to be the spiritual, the Christian values, but it's okay because of the cause, because of what we stand for. So even good, decent religious people are choosing cultural values over the spiritual, but still thinking that's God's way. So you're lighting a candle on the Supreme Court step. You're offering prayers. It's kind of a vigil. It's like a religious experience. Well, that's one reason we have every year the Days of Unleavened Bread. You go back again, okay, what is sin? What is leaven? What's the leaven of Herod? What's the leaven of hypocrisy? What determines that? And get your bearing again. Go right back to the same definition. Keeps you steady. I think we realize that much evil has been done in the name of religion in the past, and maybe very sincere people trying to do it. But much evil. What is normally considered wrong is justified if it furthered the cause of that religion. It was okay. So you had the Crusades, all that killing. The Inquisition, if you've ever read about that, perpetrated by the church on the non-Catholics. An inquisition where horrible things were done in the name of religion. Of course, jihad, we heard about that at the introduction of the sermonette and the Twin Towers. Hindu versus Islam in India and Pakistan. The Salem witch hunts in Salem, Massachusetts, earlier in our history. Jews and Arabs, ethnic cleansing, religious people, righteous causes, terrible things done. That's the nature. The lynch mobs in the South, those were done by Bible-carrying people in the past. Anti-Catholic laws in the North, Protestant people, prejudiced against the Catholics. Look at John 16:2, maybe not all that reassuring or comforting, but John chapter 16, verse 2. In John 16:2, they'll put you out of the synagogue. Okay, that's not too good. Yeah, the time will come, whosoever kills you will think he's doing God's service. How could you think that? How could you kill innocent people? Well, we're good people. We don't hurt anybody. How could you kill people? Well, this is what God wants you to do. That's distorted religious thinking. Transforming what used to be wholly political into something more attuned to religion is very dangerous. Very dangerous. You're armed now with a religious zeal. The Nazi rallies had a great deal of religious overtones to them. If you've read or seen some of the films they show, all the processions, carrying the candles, all the sense of a spiritual kind of exercise and rally. It was all godly-like, spiritual-like. Various slogans, kind of like a worship, a spiritual experience. People caught up into that. Very much like a religion. There's nothing more dangerous than religious people. I mean, people who think they're religious. There's nothing more dangerous than, or a few things more dangerous, put it that way, than people driven by a religious zeal of some type. We've all read about various cults, the crazy things they do, all in the name of religion, or some special prophet, or God. Various individuals down through history, and even in our times, this was God on earth, this individual. People believe that. We have some people that used to be a part of the Worldwide Church of God, some ministry that have gotten way out what they think they are. Some kind of prophet, some witness, and predictions, and apparent understanding of intricate prophecies and predictions about Christ's return last year, and now this year, and now this spring, and now it's put off again, and it's been put off I don't know how many times. It's amazing what human beings can slip into. So I think we see all of this, and I don't need to belabor it any further, but I think it's good to focus on this dynamic that we see around us. It can be subtle. It mixes in political things are not all wrong of and by themselves. Government's not wrong of and by itself. Not wrong to work for the government, be involved in that way. Those things are, even God establishes them, but sometimes politics mixes in with morality, and that gets very cloudy. So I want to ask the question here in the remaining time, what are the characteristics of true worshipers? Jesus taught, well, the time will come when the true worshipers. What is that? Now, many people on all kinds of causes feel like they're kind of the true standard bearer for the way America should be, or the way the world should be, or the way the church should be. What is a true worshiper? What are some of those characteristics? Won't be listing all of them. Not always easy to know. Look at 1 John chapter 4. 1 John 4, verse 1. 1 John 4, verse 1. Here John is writing to the church, Beloved, now believe not every spirit. Why would he write that? Because there was kind of a false spirit, a pseudo-religious, some kind of spirit going on that the members were kind of, oh, wow, this is really spiritual, this is really godly, and it wasn't. It looked like it. It felt like it. Sounded like it. Be careful. Believe not every spirit. Try the spirits, whether they are of God. Many false prophets are gone into the world. There's a false spirituality. Things can sound very right, very good, very biblical. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14. I don't only mean that something having to do with the social scene, that things can be that way, but look at what within the church, apparently, don't exactly know all that was going on. But here in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, there was the gift of speaking in tongues, apparently the genuine granting of that gift to members of the church. And Paul seemed to acknowledge that, but there's kind of a hint here. In chapter 14, verse 32, he says, the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. The spirit that seems to be moving some of you seems to be more in control of you. It's kind of the hint where he says, no, God's spirit that he gives, the prophets is subject to the prophets. It's not getting a hold of them in some way. So was there some kind of spirit creeping in the midst of this speaking in tongues and other gifts and other demonstrations that Paul's saying, well, hold on now. Let's think about everything that's taking place. Let me give you the way this should be working. Seems to be within that context. So trying the spirits. So the first point I want to make is the values of true worship transcend worldly pursuits. All worldly pursuits are not wrong. All movements and all social correcting wrongs and all of that are not wrong of them by themselves. But the values of true worship transcend worldly pursuit. John 17:15. John 17:15. Jesus said, I pray not that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil. So we're not removed from anything. We're right in the midst of the world. It's next door. It's where we go to work. It's all a part of our lives. We've not been asked to be removed from that. But we have values that transcend any kind of movements or causes that people are dedicated to, whatever it might be. Our values stand above those. There's a priority. All things of the world are subject to true worship, right worship. They're not all bad. We can be a part of some things, but it's all subject to true worship. 1 John chapter 2, 1 John 2, verse 15. I actually was going to say earlier that if any of the gentlemen wanted to take off your coat, you're more than welcome to do that. 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15 says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, that's above true worship, above the kingdom of God. We all love aspects of the world. We love our sports teams. We love our hometown. We love our state. We love our country. All that's fine. But we don't love it first. So don't love the world, neither the things that are in the world. If a man loves the world, the love of the Father's not in him. You're not a true worshiper. 2 Timothy 2:4. 2 Timothy 2:4. It says, nobody that's warring, that goes to war, gets all entangled in the affairs of this life. I mean, soldiers are into soldiering. They're in the military. They're separated from Main Street. They've got a duty. They've got a job. They've got a mission. So they don't get entangled with what's going on in town. They're on the base. They're ready to do their duty. So no man war entangles himself in the affairs of this life, that he may please him who has chosen him to be a soldier. We're involved in this life. We go to school, go to work, live in a neighborhood, but in another sense, we're not really entangled in those things, whatever they might be. I don't just mean political stuff. So true worshipers have one religion. That's our religion. Not a religion of the world. There's a lot of churches of the world. A lot of them do fine things, fine people. That's not our religion. That's their religion. Joseph and Daniel set good examples. They were very much a part of the governments, Babylon and Egypt, both close to the ruling authorities. As I said before, every aspect of government's not evil. It's supposed to do good. Joseph exercised righteous oversight. Let's look at Daniel chapter 6, book of Daniel chapter 6. Good illustration. Of course, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was another example of this. But Daniel chapter 6, beginning in verse 4. We remember the story. Daniel, of course, very faithful in his work, very righteous. And the various presidents and princes in Daniel 6:4 were trying to find some occasion, because they hated Daniel, concerning the kingdom, but they couldn't find none occasion or fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. He was a true worshiper. Worshiped the true God. but he worked for the Babylonian government. Or the Persians at that time. So then the men said, we will not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him, something having to do with his religion. We can come up with something having to do with the way he worships. We might have something here. So then the presidents and princes assembled together the king and said to the king, all the presidents of the kingdom and the governors and the princes and counselors and captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute, to make a firm decree that whoever shall ask a petition of any god or any man for 30 days, save you, O king, he'll be cast into the lion's den. What do you think about that decree? Well, the king didn't think it through. Well, that sounds pretty good. And now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which alters not. Apparently, once he signed it, that was it. Therefore, King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in the chamber toward Jerusalem, knelt upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did before. He wasn't changing his religion. He wasn't changing his worship of the true God. He wasn't going to change it over. True worshipers do not compromise the way of God for worldly causes of any type. As Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world. One final one in Philippians chapter 3, verse 20. Philippians 3:20. Our citizenship is in heaven, from which also we are looking for the Savior and the Lord Jesus Christ. So just underscoring what the approach of true worshipers is. Final 2 points. Just as Jesus mentioned, we have to worship in spirit and in truth. Worshiping in spirit means you worship with the right heart. Go back to the sermon we had the other day on the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes. How many in the various causes, they're well-meaning people, sometimes good causes, for the right reason. I'm not totally saying everything is wrong. But look at many times in the various causes, do the individuals in that movement, whatever it is, reflect being poor in spirit, very humble people. Maybe not so much. They know what's needed. They have the answer. Not too poor in spirit often. Is there a meekness? Blessed are the meek. Is there a lot of meekness that's reflected in whatever these rallies are or movements or who is ever doing it? You see a lot of meekness. Didn't see a lot of that on January 6th or in any of the other circumstances that come up. Merciful. Blessed are the merciful. I don't know about that. Blessed are the peacemakers. A lot of peacemaking taking place. Blessed are the pure in heart. They're honest, forthright. If you can kind of slant something or put it in a context that makes that other person look bad or gets them in trouble or make you look better or your cause look better, well, that's all right. That furthers the cause. You don't have to be pure. Just be convicted that your cause is pure. So worshiping in spirit has to do with attitude, not only faith. God's true religion is not just about faith. Let's go to Revelation chapter 2 and 3. Jesus is speaking with the spirit of the churches, is bringing a message to the churches. Won't obviously read through both chapters 2 and 3, but Jesus praises the churches. You're doing wonderful here. I appreciate this. a lot of good qualities, a lot of good expressions of Christian spirit and attitude, but then in most of them, at least 5 out of 7, verse 4, nevertheless, chapter 2, to Ephesus, well, nevertheless, I have somewhat against you. You've left your first love. There's something wrong with the spirit here. Not totally bad. Haven't left the church, but you need to correct this because you worship God in spirit. If there's something wrong with your heart, something wrong with your spirit, well, you should address that. I want to point this out to you. And I got a lot of good things. You really need to address this. Because if you worship God, you can't say, well, I'm doing 8 things just right, and I'm allowing myself this other, and that's okay. Look how many other things I'm doing right. Well, that's not the true worshipers. So hopefully they would have responded to that. Down in verse 15. Well, verse 14, I have a few things against you. Pergamos here, but I have a few things against you because you have, there are them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit fornication. So you have them also that hold to the doctrine of Nicolaitans, which thing I hate, this compromising. Allowing certain things that shouldn't be allowed. Well, that's not true worship. We all stumble in things and then repent. They had more going on than just momentary weakness, unfortunately. Down to verse 20. Thyatira, I know your works, your charity, your service, your faith. It's wonderful. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against you. You're allowing that woman Jezebel, which calls herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit fornication, eat things sacrificed unto idols. They're kind of mixing with true religion and the truth and God's way and mixing it in, and that's a part of it. Well, you can't do that. The syncretizing. That wasn't true worship. Chapter 3, verse 1, the angel unto Sardis, I know your works, the good things, I see the good things you're doing, but you live, but you're kind of dead. There's nothing going on there. You're hardly worshiping. You're not active at all. That's not the right attitude. That's not what true worshipers do. They're active in their religion, their worship of God. And finally, of course, Laodicea. Verse 17, these are individuals that are very self-satisfied about something. They feel like they're rich and increased with good. They don't need anything. They know it all, perhaps. They know everything. They're rich and increased with goods. They don't need anything. They know not that they're really a little more poor, blind, and naked than they realize, and they need to have their eyes anointed and see something. Maybe they don't want to see it. Anyway, these are having to do with attitudes in worship. A right spirit is teachable, not closed-minded. You think of the fruits of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 2, and then we'll go on to the final one. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 2. None of us are know-it-alls. If any man thinks he knows anything, 1 Corinthians 8 and verse 2, if any man thinks he knows anything, he doesn't know anything like he ought to. Well, we all know things. Doesn't mean that you go around, I don't know nothing. Doesn't mean that. It's when you think you know it all. You think you've got it all down, you don't get it yet. You don't. So we worship God in spirit. How's our spirit? How's our attitude? The final point, we worship God in spirit and in truth. So it's not a man-made religion for man-made causes. The Constitution of the United States did not come down from Mount Sinai. Most of us know that. God's holy days, people don't believe we need to be bothering with them, but at least we can say, well, they are from the Bible. At least we can go to the Bible and see them, Old and New Testament. So our holy days, our holidays, are biblical ones, not pagan ones. Matthew chapter 28, Matthew 28. Jesus said, "Go you therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." That's a part of our true worship. People are baptized. Teaching them to observe all things. There's observances. There's things true worshipers do. There's an attitude of a true worshiper, and there's things true worshipers do, and there's things they don't do. There's fruits of that Spirit. There's beatitudes that characterize true worshipers. We try the spirits. So we're to observe the things what He commanded. So we strive to observe those things. That's how we worship. True religion, true worshipers don't go along with a crowd. They might in some ways, at some times, but they don't automatically do what the majority does. Matthew chapter 7, verse 14. Matthew 7:14. This well-known verse to us. "Strait is the gate, narrow is the way, which leads unto life, and few there be that find it." So the true religion, not some of the other movements that have been down through history where masses of people join it, it's relatively few are called out to be true worshipers, to worship in spirit and truth. Strait is the gate, narrow is the way, few there be that are in the true religion. Today in America, what used to be founded on the Christian church, Judeo-Christian way of life, it's kind of being dropped, and we're picking up other religion-like movements and beliefs and practices, causes. So that's filling the void. And I think we know, kind of separating people more and more. Kind of like Catholics and Protestants sometimes in history. So we have one religion. We're all a part of the one religion. We're all kind of falling short at times and don't always see everything the same way, but we're in the one religion. The one Spirit supposed to work in us, according to the truth of the Bible. We can have fervor for other good works, causes, things that we donate our time and energy to. They're not wrong of them by themselves, but we don't compromise our true worship for some false worship or religion. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 2, two more verses. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 2. Paul said when he thought he saw the members of the Corinthian church kind of wavering a little bit, I guess, in what they were listening to or doing, he says, "For I am jealous over you with a godly jealousy. For I have espoused you to one husband to present you as a pure virgin to Christ. We're espoused to one religion. I'm not giving this because I think, well, we're drifting somewhere. But I think it was important to recognize kind of the trends around us and how it takes on kind of a religious, spiritual, worship-like element and attitude. I've espoused you to one husband, present you as a pure virgin to Christ, the true religion, the true worshipers, not perfect people, don't worship perfectly, but called to do that. Matthew 24 and verse 22, there's a lot of religions out there. There are Christian religions, there are religions based on other beliefs that are defined as religions. Then there's other kind of religions cropping up, kind of political like religions, movements. As I mentioned before, like the Nazis, almost like a religious thing. There's a lot of religions out there, a lot of worship. But Matthew 24 in verse 22 says, except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened, because there are true worshipers, not perfect people, but because there are true worshipers that are striving to worship in the right spirit and in truth, worshiping the true God. I'll cut that short. I won't neglect mankind. I won't give up on mankind. I won't allow mankind to destroy everything, because there are true worshipers. So who's doing the most, really, for the world? What cause is contributing the most to everyone's benefit? Worshiping God in spirit and in truth, setting that example, being a part of that worship. So we have one religion. It's not a religion of the world. We have one religion. Let's make sure we're always worshiping God in spirit and in truth.